Hello, my name is Muhammad Rayhan Nugraha from the Maritime University of Haji. Today, I'm going to present to you. I'm going to explain to you what is language and culture. Let us begin. So, today I am going to explain this subject, that is, definition of culture, cultural universal, types of culture, cultural patterns and behaviors, language, the relationship between language and culture. Let us continue then. First, the definition of culture. According to expert Edward Tyler, a British anthropologist, gave the definition of culture. That is, culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, law, custom, and many other capacities, and habits acquired by a man as a member of society. According to Newmark describes culture as a way of life of a certain society which is expressed by a certain language. According to Clifford Geertz, culture is a symbolic meaning system. It is a semiotic system in which symbols function to communicate meaning from one mind to another. That is what the expert described. That is how the experts describe culture. Let's continue. From the standpoint of contemporary culture anthropologists, culture is characterized by the following four basic features. First is culture is a kind of social inheritance instead of biological heritage. Culture is shared by the whole community, not belonging to any particular individual or certain individual. Culture is a symbolic meaning system. A symbolic meaning system in which language is one of the most important ones. Culture is a unified system, the integral parts of which are closely related to one another. In general, culture can be divided into three categories. Material culture as the product of human manufacture. Social culture as the people's form of social organization. The third is ideological culture, including people's beliefs and values. Let's continue. Now it's cultural universal. Cultural universals are elements common to all human cultures, regardless of historical moment, geography, or cultural origin. According to Conjoroningrat, categorize culture universal into seven, namely language, knowledge system, social organizations, life tool system, livelihood system, religion system, and arts. Let's continue. The idea of culture universals itself runs contrary to cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that all norms, beliefs, and values are dependent on their cultural context and should not be used in the study or description of another culture. The way to deal with our own assumption is not to pretend that they don't exist, but rather acknowledge them, and then use the awareness that we are not neutral to inform our conclusions. Cultural relativism is in part a response to Western ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the tendency to look at the world primarily from the perspectives of one's own culture. By your own culture, judging another culture solely by the values and standards of your own culture. Ethnocentrism may take obvious forms in which one consciously believes that one's people's arts are the most beautiful, your values are the most virtuous, and your beliefs are the most truthful. That is ethnocentrism. Let us continue. The types of culture. The word culture doesn't mean just national culture, but a whole range of different types of culture. A whole range of different types of culture. This includes corporate culture, professional culture, gender, age, religious culture, regional culture, and class culture. You can see the examples on the screen. Now let us continue. Cultural patterns of behavior. Cultures widely have characteristics with such patterns for living according to some anthropologists have universal characteristics. George Peter Murdoch on Thomasson in 1986 mentions 7 cultural patterns of behavior, namely they originate in the human mind. Second, they facilitate human environmental interactions. They satisfy human basic needs. They are cumulative and adjust to changes in external and internal conditions. And 5, they tend to form a consistent structure. 6, they are learned and shared by all members of the society. And 7, they are transmitted to new generation. So now let us continue to language. Language. According to Sapir in 1921, language is a purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions, and desire by means of voluntarily produced symbols. Language is a part of culture and a part of human behavior. It is often held that the function of language is to express thought and to communicate information. Language also fulfills many other tasks such as greeting people, conducting religious service, and other things. Language and culture are intertwined because language is an outcome of or result of a culture as a whole, and also a vehicle by which the other aspects of culture are shaped and communicate. The function of a language is the primary vehicle or tool of communication between humans. Language reflects both the personality of the individual and the culture of his or her history. Individual. Language reflects both the personality of the individual and the culture of his or her history. In turn, it helps shape both personality and culture. Language makes the growth and transmission of culture, the continuity of societies, and the effective functioning and culture of social group possible. The relationship between language and culture. It is obvious that language plays a paramount role in developing, elaborating, and transmitting culture and language, enabling us to store meanings and experience to facilitate communication. The function of language is so important in communication that it is even exaggerated by some scholars. The most famous one is the hypothesis concerning the relationship between language and culture, which Schneider and Tabor regards as misconception constituting serious difficulties for cross-cultural understanding. You can summarize the relationship between culture and language as the following. Language is a key component of culture. It is the primary medium for transmitting much of culture. Without language, culture will not be possible. Children learning their native language are learning their own culture. Learning a second language Learning a second language also involves learning a second culture to varying degrees. Language is influenced and shaped by culture. It reflects culture. Cultural differences are the most serious areas, causing misunderstanding, unpleasantness, and even conflict in cross-cultural communication. I'm sorry if the last few sentences and paragraphs is a bit rushed, because in about 10 minutes I have dinner, and after that I have study and work. And that's all from me. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.